Are we doing this? We're doing this. We're doing this. Okay. I have tried to make a YouTube channel for probably about 2 years now, but my self-confidence has ruined my attempt each time. But I am officially just saying, screw it, man. I got some cool shit to say, and if you want to listen, then listen. Today, I have something that's been on my mind, and whenever I've tried to look it up, I have not found anything that is in relation to it. And that is in relation to Star Wars today. But what about Star Wars? You know, Mandalorian Season 3 is currently happening, but we're not talking about that. You know, ratings are down currently. I think there's a number of reasons for that. I think having The Mandalorian Season 2.5 during the Book of Boba Fett season was a major mistake. I think waiting as long as they did to release The Mandalorian was also a huge mistake, so that the hype died down. Star Wars Theory touched on this in a video that I actually watched earlier today. So shout out to the GOAT. But that's not what we're talking about today. Bad Batch also just wrapped up. And except I do have an issue with the finale that I am going to address, and I'm sure other people are, but when we get there, we get there. As for now, this is the topic that nobody is talking about in Star Wars, and while we seem to be getting a bunch of Star Wars content in regards to right after the prequels with Bad Batch and the sequel era with The Mandalorian. Now, my issue is there seems to be a lot of focus on this gap between Star Wars Return of the Jedi and the sequels. And not that that's bad. That's a great thing, because one of the biggest issues with the sequels was, hey man, how the fuck did we get here? And why are all our characters acting like a bunch of buffoons? Why is it like that? And not to say that our journey to get there will be justified. That will be up to the viewer. But, oh, excuse me, I spit. I'm getting a little passionate about this. But between the rumored Luke Skywalker deepfake show and the Ahsoka show, well, which it will presumably go back in time with various female actors, it will most likely focus on that sequel in between the original trilogy and sequel trilogy era, where she's trying to find Ezra through finding Grand Admiral Thrawn, as it was teased in Mandalorian Season 2, and actually now Mandalorian Season 3, 2 times now, because I think the Purrgil in, I think it was the season opener, was obviously in homage to Rebels. Actually 4, now that I'm thinking about it. 2, the TIE Fighter defense, because the TIE Fighter initiative was clearly Thrawn's idea, and if it wasn't for Project Stardust and Kanan Jarrus affecting the fuel depot the way he did, that probably would have taken off. The other thing is, we got a cameo from Garazeb Aurelios. A literal cameo from Star Wars Rebels characters. Not even just like sprinkles. A full-on fucking cherry. And then the Beskar alloy at the end of the last episode makes me think that Sabine Wren took that shit into her own hands. Because you have to remember, at this point in the Mandalorian story, we are... I know I'm sidetracking a bit here, but at this point in the Mandalorian story, we are years after Return of the Jedi, and years after the start of The Mandalorian even. So the idea that Sabine had lost faith in the New Republic's way of operating at this point is not far-fetched at all. But what I want to talk about finally, that I'm getting to, is the idea of there not being a show within the original trilogy. Now, what do I mean by this? I mean focusing on our Rebels. Now, we do have Star Wars Rebels, which is... I love Star Wars Rebels. I can't express enough how much I love Star Wars Rebels. The fact that it can even compare to the Clone Wars should say enough. It doesn't match it, but it comes close, which is incredibly hard. I love it when I have a random timer on my phone that interrupts my train of thought. But anyways, Star Wars Rebels. It gave us that great in-between episode 3 before we had the Kenobi show and Bad Batch, obviously, where it's like, what happened? How did we get to the original trilogy? And it connects a bunch of prequel characters to original trilogy characters. So you get like Wedge Antilles, you get Bail Organa, etc., etc. And then obviously like I love like the Maul Ezra dynamic. There's a bunch of things I love about Rebels, but one of the things that made me think about this was the appearance of Leia Organa in Rebels and how we got to see her as a senator at just the young age of 15. But if you think about this, the Clone Wars show is a 7-season show that spans over the course of 4 years. Star Wars Rebels is a 4-year show that spans over the course of 4 years. A little less in depth, but it's also only focusing on one crew opposed to a galaxy-wide conflict. Now, in between episode 4 and episode 5, there are 3 years. Now, not that those 3 years aren't explored in the comics and the extended lore, or the EU extended universe. That's not an issue that it's expanded there. The issue is that it's not expanded elsewhere because everything else has been. And what I mean by that is where you could make the argument of, oh, there was only books there before, there's probably been a show to be stamped in place. Because we even have some content dating before The Phantom Menace with Tales of the Jedi. So the idea that you couldn't make a show during this time is not an argument. It kind of scratches my head why more people aren't asking this. I would love to see, even if it's a Clone Wars style animated show with Luke Skywalker in the Rebellion, Leia Organa in the Rebellion, Han Solo in the Rebellion, Lando Calrissian's character arc from becoming, or maybe he wouldn't have been in between 4 and 5, but you get what I mean. You get what I mean. Seeing the progression from 4 to 5, because clearly George Lucas did such a good job with the dialogue at making, clearly these characters have had more than one interaction where they have each other's backs. If you look at the way Han and Luke interact at the beginning of episode 5, it's clear that they have been through a number of things since the end of episode 4. Just by the way that they get along, by the way Han is so frantic about how Luke is stuck out in the icy blizzard storm of Hoth and is the only one that goes out past the gates closing to look for him. So I think the idea that we don't have those 3 years covered is insane to me. And I know I took a really long time to get to this point. I kept derailing. My Star Wars brain started activating. But there's so much to explore. Boba Fett, when he hunts down Luke Skywalker because Vader hears like this guy with the last name Skywalker blew up the Death Star. He's like, that can't be a coincidence. Or no, he looks to, excuse me, I have to correct myself. I don't feel like cutting this out and editing it. He searches for whoever destroys the Death Star, and Boba Fett, after his encounter with Luke, after they both merely survive, he then relays the name Skywalker to Vader, which he is just baffled. And at that point, that's where the game changes, and Vader kind of thinks like, what if I overthrew the Emperor and ruled it with Luke? And obviously that's not how it went. He chose a different path and the right path. But that's when the game changes. It's once he figures out who the fuck Luke is. And they had an interaction before the one in Empire Strikes Back. A lot of people don't know that. That happens in the comics. He sees Luke's lightsaber and sees that it's obviously his old one, and I just would love to see that. I don't care if it's animated. Animated Star Wars has gotten so amazing. Just watch The Bad Batch. Look at the scenery, the details, the literally the complexion of the faces. It's breathtaking, and I think if you explored some of these OG times and characters, only good things would come out of it. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe this is the first time this discussion really happens and people give their opinions about it. But anytime I've tried to look something up about this, I can only find like Rumors about the new Luke Skywalker show after Return of the Jedi. What about Luke Skywalker when he's becoming a beast? I want to see the process, you know? And I get the mystery is part of the fun, but if we've already explored, if we're going to go back and finish the Clone Wars, and even if it's just the 13 out of the 54 lost episodes, if you're going to go back and bother with doing something like that, it clearly means that that extra layer of depth for the hardcore fans, not the weekend Star Wars fans that would miss like a Mandalorian season 2.5, they're gonna love that. It's only gonna be well received. And in fact, you might pull some of those original trilogy fans back. Who knows? I don't know. I just feel like that 3-year period of the rebellion in between episode 4 after the Death Star blows up and the Empire Strikes Back needs to be explored. Because in between episode 5 and 6 is only 1 year. And, well, that should be explored as well, because it's like, why did the Empire stop striking back? Because clearly they took a massive dub at the end of episode 5. I just think that needs to be fleshed out a little more, because it's like, I go from watching the prequels, and you have every little thing fleshed out, even things like fucking banking. Like, I love that interview with Dave Filoni when he jokes about, like, how he has to make a banking clan arc fun for kids, because it's like, how the fuck am I supposed to do this? It just cracks me up, because it's I don't know, man. I think I'm reaching the end of my rant, but I would just love to see that era of Star Wars explored just a little bit more, because there's a lot to tell, and it's not like they can't tell it. They got that Disney money. If they can do the shit that they do in live, if I can get hour specials of live action Coruscant and Andor and The Mandalorian, suck my nutsack. Give me a fucking another Rebel series with Luke Skywalker as the star. That's it. This is my intro to my YouTube channel. I'm gonna just rant about some random shit that I like and post some other cool shit like my card library. So stay tuned. I hope you're ready for sugar, because I was born ready. Oh, man. Is it too late to kill myself?